AI chatbots like ChatGPT, Claude, and Bard are amazing, but which of them is the best at digital marketing? And, importantly, how close are we to them doing your digital marketing for you? Let's run some tests and find out. Now, in order to make this test fair, we're going to use the best versions of each of these chatbots. So we've got ChatGPT Plus, we've got Bard using a personal account, which also gives it access to the Bard extensions, and we've got Claude 2. For all of these tests, we're going to use exactly the same prompt. And so that I can give an accurate assessment of the quality of the answers, we're going to ask these chatbots about something I know fairly well, SEO. I've asked all three chatbots the same question, basically giving it a bit of a brief about this fictional business that I'm creating and asking it to come up with an SEO strategy. I've also invited them to ask me any follow-up questions that they might have to help them tailor their strategies a bit more to my specifics. Now, what I've got from Claude is okay. There's not a huge amount of detail here, but what is here is actually fairly tailored to the industry and the business that I've mentioned. For example, we can see it here suggesting some of the keywords to target and suggesting some of the types of websites that I should reach out to get backlinks. Now, this is a fairly short answer, and that's fairly typical of Claude. It tends to give very concise answers. Let's contrast this with Bard. Bard gave a more comprehensive answer and it also formatted it in a more attractive way, making it much easier to read. It suggested some keywords, it's given me broad brushstroke recommendations for things like content strategy, on-page SEO, off-page SEO, and measurement. And it's also asked me some clarifying questions, which I've answered. But when I've answered those follow-up questions, to be honest, it hasn't really changed the recommendations for me at all. Nevertheless, this is a reasonable start. ChatGPT, by contrast, actually asked me the follow-up questions immediately. Now, it won't always do this, but I do like this approach because once it understands my answers, it can then give me a more custom strategy. It's broken down each component of the strategy and given me more tailored recommendations, again, suggesting things like different keywords for each of my two target audiences. Now, sure, plenty of these recommendations are still really generic, but again, this is a pretty good start. So I'd say in this round, we've got 1 point for Claude, 2 points for Bard, and 3 points for ChatGPT. Okay, so the real world problem here is I now have a massive SEO strategy with loads of recommendations about things to do, but I don't have a huge amount of detail about any one topic. So what I want to do now is dig a little bit deeper in one particular area to see how in-depth the recommendations these tools can get me. Now, backlinks are one area that a lot of marketers struggle with, so let's ask for a bit more recommendation on how to build a backlink strategy. And again, I'm going to ask the same question to each of the three AI tools. As before, Claude's answer is fairly short. There are some specific things here, for example, suggesting that I post on influencer and blogger sites, interview some influential influencers in my space, and create an influencer directory. Some of these are fairly creative and actually not bad ideas at all. So whilst this is a short answer, I'm fairly impressed here. On this occasion, I'm not so impressed with Bard's responses. They are fairly generic. Things like create high quality content that's worth linking to, that's fine, but it's a strategy based on hope. It has given me some specific tactics that I can use, but it's also missed plenty of big opportunities. So how about ChatGPT? Well, I have to say I'm really impressed with this answer. It's given me 10 different backlink strategies. And whilst they're not all fantastic, some of them are really good. I love this idea about collaborating with universities. That could get me some great links. So I'm a big fan of some of this. I also like the fact that it's mentioned PR and media outreach. This is definitely something that I would be looking to push if I were running this SEO campaign. So overall in this round, I think I'm going to give Claude and Bard 1.5 points each. ChatGPT gets all 3. Okay, so as someone who's done a fair bit of SEO, one of the main backlink strategies I would actually be using if I was running this campaign would be reaching out to journalists and seeing if I can get some big coverage in major online publications. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of the AI chat tools how I could go about doing that and see if it can help me with some very specific advice. Claude's answer, fairly short, quite concise. There's nothing here that I would disagree with. This all looks very logical and sensible. There are some threads here like newsjacking, which I'd probably want to ask for a bit more detail on, and I might ask for some specific templates and techniques on how to do this, but this is a decent start. And the same can be said for Bard. We've got the basic process to follow here, and then we've got some additional tips on how to make this process more successful. And again, there's nothing that I would disagree with here. There's also nothing massively creative, new, or original. This is basically just covering the basics. It's a bit like a journalist outreach 101, which if you're a complete beginner, might be exactly what you're looking for. So, ChatGPT, over to you. What have we got here? Well, here we have a very tailored process. We've got some really specific suggestions here about how to make our work more effective. We've got some suggestions of platforms that we might want to use to get our journalist contacts, which I like. And ChatGPT was also the only tool that actually gave me tips on how to prioritize my time, given that this sort of work can be incredibly time consuming. So I feel like ChatGPT again has won this round. Again, I'm going to share 1.5 points for Claude, 1.5 points for Bard, but 3 points for ChatGPT. Okay, next task, I want them to create me a template outreach email that I can use to go out to journalists. Let's see how they do. So firstly, Claude. Now I think Claude has actually done a pretty good job of this. A couple of reasons why. Firstly, it suggested me a really good subject line. I actually quite like this as a subject line. It suggested some story angles that I could pursue, and the whole tone of this email is actually really pretty snappy and bold. And because Claude tends to give shorter answers, that approach actually works really well for this email, which does tend to be snappy because journalists are incredibly busy. And if you're writing a huge waffly email, they're just not going to read it. There's a decent CTA at the end. Overall, given the amount of information that Claude has about this website, i.e. hardly any, I think it's done a really decent job here. Let's take a look at Bard. I think Bard has also done a fantastic job here. It's cut straight to the point with a fairly short email, and then it's given a PS where it gives more detail should the journalist want it, which I really like as an approach. It's explained why the journalist and publication might be interested. It's given a short summary of what the product is about, and in the PS, it's given a summary of the product. Now, what it hasn't done, which Claude did, was suggest some different story angles. But again, I think this is a pretty good attempt. So ChatGPT then. Actually, ChatGPT has done a pretty good job of this as well. It's given a subject which maybe isn't as snappy, but it has used an exclusive angle, which may well appeal to journalists. The email isn't that concise, but what it does do is it uses headings to break up the content, which makes it nice and easy to scan. At the end, it even thanks the journalist given the countless pictures that they're likely to be receiving. It's also given me some gaps where I might want to insert some statistics that could be the basis of a news story. And again, I think this is a pretty good template. Now, sure, if I was writing this from scratch myself, I would probably use about half the number of words that these templates are using. But if I'd never emailed a journalist before and didn't know where to start, these would be a great starting point. Now, before we move on, Bard does have one more trick up its sleeve, and that is its integration with Google Docs. Now, OneTize is actually a business that I had an idea to start about 7 years ago. So there is information in Google Docs about OneTize. So I can ask Bard to go and recreate this email template using the actual features from the product. And then I can ask it to go and have a look inside Google Drive to learn about the product. Now, although it has a huge amount of real life information to work from, what it's actually kind of done is hallucinated some features here. Now, these features are pretty good. They make a lot of sense and actually they're quite compelling, and I wish I'd thought of them myself. But they don't exist, or at least they were never mentioned in the document, so this is pure hallucination. Okay, so what's my take on these? Well, firstly, in this specific test, ChatGPT clearly did the best. Now, that hasn't been the case every time I've tried this. Some conversations that you'll have with Google Bard, for example, it'll give you really good quality detailed answers. Some conversations with ChatGPT, it will get off track immediately and the rest of that conversation will be a bit of a washout. So these results may not be typical. The other thing to note is that none of these tools absolutely nailed the task. Yes, there's some great advice here, even moments of brilliance. But there's also a lot of generic and even bad advice that, if someone followed it without understanding the topic themselves, would waste a huge amount of their time. And if there's one thing that most marketing teams don't have the time to do, it's implementing a whole bunch of SEO recommendations that don't make sense or are never going to work in the first place. So do I think asking an AI to build you an SEO strategy for you to blindly follow is a good idea? Probably not. Do I think any of these tools, if you just followed the recommendations that they gave you, would help you beat really good competitors? Probably not. You'd waste too much of your time doing pointless things unless you understood enough to know which of the things that they were suggesting were pointless. And that's something really important to remember. These tools aren't optimized to give you the best SEO or the best content or the best marketing strategy. They're not even optimized to give you the truth. They have no concept of truth. Instead, they are optimized to make you satisfied with their answer. They are trained to be eager to please, but they don't know what they don't know. Now, I think that this specific area of AI will improve. Now, I think this will change. Google Bard now allows you to sort of fact check its answers by comparing its response to content that it finds in Google search. And it can show you links from other websites that back up what it's saying. But even before some of these problems are solved, are these tools useful for coming up with initial ideas, building templates, creating an initial draft of a strategy or content that you can refine, making sure that you've got the basics covered? Yeah, they're amazing for that stuff. Are these AI tools a really useful brainstorming partner to help you come up with new and original ideas that you might not have thought of otherwise? Absolutely. AI doesn't need to do all of your work for you in order to be revolutionary. Right now, these tools can help give you ideas to get you started, brainstorm with you in the messy middle when you get stuck, and then help you dig through and analyze the data once you're done. Just check out this. I've just thrown in a horribly complicated export of some email data from a CRM, and I've just asked ChatGPT Advanced Data Analysis to chomp through it, give me some trends and recommendations in order to improve my email marketing campaigns. And just look at this. It's plotted open rates and click-through rates in a chart for me so I can see what the best time of day to send my emails is going to be. Now, this was a data set of 172,000 emails. To process that myself would have taken me ages, but working with ChatGPT and prompting it and asking it and brainstorming with it to help me find that information took just a matter of minutes. So I think actually the key to getting the most from these tools for use in a marketing context is, just like any worker, understand how they work and what their limitations are. That way you can make the most of their strengths. These tools will undoubtedly help you become more productive and produce better work if you work with them using their strengths. And for that reason, I think tools like Claude, Bard, and ChatGPT should be part of every marketer's toolkit. Now, if you want to work with us at Powered by AI to identify the highest leverage uses of generative AI for your business, given your team and your particular marketing workflows, go to our website at pbai.co and request your free AI marketing review. During this, one of our human team will work with you to understand what your current marketing processes are, how you're using AI at the moment, and they'll recommend any uses of generative AI that might help you leverage your team's time and expertise to get more results faster. We also have an audit and training offering which will help you build out better AI-powered processes to do your marketing if you like as well. So go to pbai.co to request that today. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.